As I promised you all about a week ago, here is a detailed video about Lyney's team potential. As a baseline, keep in mind that this video will be focused on teams that cover Lyney's main usage, meaning something that takes advantage of his mono Pyro focused passive. More niche uses of Lyney might come up down the line, but in pre-beta phase that's difficult to gauge. A quick disclaimer for the calculations done in this video. Even on mono Pyro teams, managing Lyney's energy requirements isn't necessarily easy. The reason is that Zhongli is often a bad particle generator due to how inconsistent her Goba elemental skill can be, and also Bennett doesn't end up feeding any direct particles to Lyney during rotations for time reasons. The result is that alternating burst usage between two different rotations is actually a valid alternative here, as replacing his burst with a charge attack isn't a super significant damage loss, especially if that allows you to run 0 energy recharge substats. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. When it comes to Lyney team builds, for monopyro structures there is essentially a main choice to make. Does the idea of playing a bow charge attack user without anti-stagger support scare you, or do you think this factor can be handled by taunts alone? Based on what I've seen from online footage, Lyney's taunt is pretty effective, but there is enough of a reasonable doubt regarding how it will translate to practical scenarios that exploring both worlds is fine. So, starting from the taunt-reliant teams, we can find some of the strongest damage compositions for Lyney. Specifically, the traditional monopyro structure with Kazuha is what suits him best, because it's a team with high damage ceiling that also translates very well to AoE scenarios thanks to Kazuha and Zhongli. Effectively, this wouldn't feel much different if compared to currently monopyro teams, which is great for a single target based damage dealer like Lyney, so somebody who needs all the help he can get in AoE. Alternatively, the Lynette variant is also quite competitive. Losing Kazuha's damage buffs is not that big of a deal here, because Lyney and Zhongli already get so much of those from passive and artifact effects respectively, and also Lynette is significantly faster than Kazuha in the rotation. However, since stretching Lyney's damage window could make him lose Bennett's attack buff for the last attack, it's safer to keep it as the last hit so you don't risk losing the buff for higher value hits, like his burst and elemental skill. Overall, this team certainly won't be as good in AoE as the Kazuha variant, because the latter is kind of in a league of his own in that department thanks to his grouping, but maybe Lynette having an additional taunt thanks to her burst will help making this composition more viable defensively. Looking at more defensive compositions, the Zhongli monopyro team stacks up pretty well single target damage wise. Thanks to Zhongli's shield, you're almost never going to have to worry about getting staggered. Of course, however, the damage loss in terms of AoE is probably huge, as you're losing the luxury of an anemo character's grouping capabilities, as well as what that actually means for Zhongli, since without grouping, her Pyronado isn't going to be able to hit as many targets at once most likely. Overall, it's a nice comp thanks to its comfort value, but it will definitely pale in comparison to the anemo variants in terms of damage output. An alternative to this is a personal favorite of mine, namely Lyney Hyper with Kazuha and Zhongli. The peculiar part of this team is that the rotations are very short, as you avoid using Kazuha's burst, since that will also require you to use a second Kazuha skill for energy purposes, stretching the overall rotation length by almost 4 seconds. On the other hand, without those you can run a 15 seconds rotation, which maximizes the impact of Lyney's damage, since it's able to do about 90% of the team damage with just 5 or 6 seconds of downtime. Basically, this is the composition that will scale up the best with investment on Lyney specifically, and probably sort of what you'll see being used for Lyney speedruns, at least in single target scenarios. The last alternative is the Dehya variant of the Lyney Hyper team. Dehya basically replaces Zhongli in the Kazuha monopyro team here, trading damage for interruption resistance support. The downside of Dehya as opposed to Zhongli is that her elemental skill cooldown is 20 seconds long, meaning that you can't really run shorter rotations here, so the outcome is pretty much a variant of the first monopyro comp I've shown, but without Zhongli's damage. Yanfei and Toma variants of this team would also be pretty similar to this, as they're similar to Dehya in terms of their defensive capabilities cooldowns. This is the composition that has performed the worst damage-wise in my calculations. Alright, that's about it. Overall, I would say Lyney is definitely packed with several kinds of great team builds in terms of damage and practicality, so I don't think he will have anything to worry about when he actually comes out. Personally, I hope the more offensive variants of his work out, since they're the ones that make him look very appealing to me. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. See you next time!